The Knicks just made a decision that could completely change their roster, and most Knicks fans probably did not realize how important it was because New York had the opportunity to already extend Deuce McBride. They didn't. And I do not think that's because the Knicks do not value Deuce. Actually, I think it might be the exact opposite, because instead of locking Deuce into a new contract right now, the Knicks chose to keep something incredibly valuable, and that's flexibility. And when you combine that with the Knicks' second apron situation, their massive future salary commitments, their need for another center, and the fact that Deuce is entering the final year of his contract, there are suddenly some very interesting possibilities. Could the Knicks be preparing to make a trade? Could Deuce actually become one of their most valuable trade pieces, or is New York simply trying to protect itself financially while keeping one of its most important bench players? Let's break down exactly what's happening. First, we need to establish something. Deuce McBride is not the same player the Knicks drafted. He came into the league as a defense-first guard who struggled to consistently score. Now, he's become one of the most reliable shooters on this roster. Last season, Deuce averaged about 12 points per game and shot an incredible 41% from 3, and he did that while playing a meaningful role on a championship team. That's important, because we're not talking about some random expiring contract. We're talking about a 25-year-old guard who has already proven that he can contribute to a championship-level rotation. And he's still under contract for the upcoming season, and that's exactly why his contract is so interesting, because Deuce is entering the final year of his 3-year, $13 million deal, and if he has another season like last year, he's going to get paid a lot. Significantly more than what he's making now. So the Knicks had a decision to make. They could try to extend him early, or they could wait, and they chose to wait. At first glance, you might think, why wouldn't the Knicks want to lock him up? But there's a very logical reason. If the Knicks had extended Deuce now, they would have limited their ability to trade him for a significant period of time. Instead, by letting the deadline pass without an extension, the Knicks preserved their ability to use his contract as part of a potential mid-season trade. That's according to the reporting surrounding the decision. And this is where things get really interesting, because the Knicks have a massive problem. Their championship roster is expensive. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart, and then you have all the other contracts around them. The second apron does not give New York unlimited flexibility. Every contract matters, every roster spot matters, and every future raise matters. So if Deuce is eventually looking for a significant payday, as you think he would, the Knicks have to ask themselves, can we afford him? And if the answer becomes no, they need to preserve the ability to make a move. And now we come back to the biggest hole on this roster, center. The Knicks lost Mitchell Robinson, they did not bring back Ariel Hukporti, Trey Jemison is gone, Jeremy Sohan is gone, and the Knicks still have a glaring need for another big. And yes, even with the signing of Andre Drummond, the Knicks need a third-string center, preferably a younger and more athletic player as an insurance piece. And for many weeks now, we've been asking, why haven't the Knicks just signed anybody for that third-string spot? Maybe we're just looking at this backwards though, because maybe the Knicks do not want to spend their final roster flexibility on a random veteran. Maybe they're waiting for a trade, and if they are, Deuce suddenly becomes much more interesting, because he's a young, productive guard on a very manageable expiring contract that's valuable around the league. And I'm not saying the Knicks are definitely trading Deuce. I personally would not want them to. There has been no confirmed reports saying that, but the fact that New York specifically preserved his trade flexibility makes it impossible to ignore that possibility. And if a center becomes available during the trade deadline in the season, the Knicks now have more ways to make that trade happen. Now here's where I want to be very clear. I would not trade Deuce just for the sake of trading him. He's valuable to this team. He knows the system. He's already won a championship with these guys. He's a good shooter and he's a good defender. And he's one of the few young players on this roster who has already proven he can handle playoff basketball, and that's extremely difficult to replace. So if you're trading Deuce, you better be getting something really good. And this is where the center situation matters. If the Knicks can find a legitimate two-way center for the long-term future who fills a major hole, then maybe you consider it. But if the return is just another fringe rotation player, no. In that case, you should absolutely keep Deuce, because the Knicks do not need to make a trade, they need to make the right trade. That's a very important distinction. And there's one other piece of Knicks news that I do not want to overlook. Gerson Rosas is leaving the Knicks after 4 years with the organization, and if you're thinking, who cares, he's a front office executive, I would actually pay attention to this one. Because Rosas was not just some random employee, he reportedly played a major role behind the scenes in building this championship roster. He was involved in major acquisitions including Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges. And now he leaves the organization after helping New York win its first championship in 53 years. That is significant, but it also makes me wonder what comes next. Because the Knicks are entering a completely different phase now. They are not trying to build a contender anymore, they're trying to keep one, and that's arguably harder. So this is what makes the Deuce decision so fascinating. The Knicks are not simply deciding whether they like Miles McBride, they had to think about the next 3, 4, and 5 years. What happens when Cat needs another massive contract? What happens when OG's contract gets bigger? What happens when Mikal Bridges is making big money? What happens when Deuce becomes more expensive? And what happens when the Knicks need another center? And what happens when young players like Tyler Nickel, Mohamed Diawara, and Pacome Darie begin demanding roster spots? Every decision affects the next one. That's what life is like under the second apron. You cannot just say, we like this guy, so let's pay him. Instead, you have to ask, can we still build a championship roster if we pay him? And that's why the Knicks' decision on Deuce could end up being much more important than it looks today. So here's where I stand. I don't think the Knicks refusing to extend Deuce means they're giving up on him. I actually think it shows how much they're thinking ahead. They're preserving flexibility, they're keeping their options open, and if the right trade becomes available, Deuce could potentially become part of that equation. But I would only move him for a player who genuinely makes the Knicks even better, because Deuce has already shown us what he can do. He's a championship level rotation player, he's 25 years old, he can shoot, he can defend, and he's getting better. So now I want to hear from you guys. If the Knicks get a legitimate opportunity to trade Deuce for a starting caliber center, would you do it? Or do you keep Deuce and find another way to solve the center problem? Let me know in the comments, because I have a feeling this is a decision we're going to be talking about again once the season starts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure that you like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.